It was 2 years ago on Friday when an explosion on the Deepwater Horizon oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico killed 11 men. It is the largest oil spill in U.S. history. 2 years later, state officials say hundreds of miles of Louisiana shoreline remains heavily oiled, and marine life is still suffering. LPB followed researchers on a recent trip to Bay Jimmy to get the latest on life in the Gulf. 2 years after the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill, Louisiana and the Gulf region are still feeling the impact of the nation's worst environmental disaster.
I can tell you that today we still have over 200 miles of our shoreline oiled in Louisiana.
On the surface, it appears much of the region's seafood and tourism industries are recovering. But it's what lies beneath the surface that remains cause for concern. More than 1 million barrels of oil still lurking in the Gulf.
We've got I'd call a substantial disagreement with the Coast Guard and BP. When you consider the fact that coastal Louisiana is so different than the other states, we've asked over and over again if they would put monitors, active monitoring stations in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Louisiana to sense where oil is. And to think about the fact that you're talking about multiple times more oil than was spilled during all of Valdez, and these folks are unwilling to come in and put a long-term monitoring system in place is just unacceptable.
A new report from the National Wildlife Federation identifies specific areas that are vulnerable to the residual oil. The most visible, bottlenose dolphins, high on the food chain, that are experiencing higher than normal mortality rates, along with evidence that contamination from the spill is slowly killing large colonies of deepwater corals, low on the food chain, but critical to supporting other Gulf marine life. Other species of concerns: endangered sea turtles, Atlantic bluefin tuna, and the brown pelican.
So what we're seeing every spring is that as the temperatures warm, the oil gets warm and it goes from a solid state back to a liquid state, and it begins to bubble up through the sand and the marsh sediments. When the oil gets warm and it bubbles up, it goes back to a more toxic state. And so there are several things. If a bird comes and it's foraging in this area and it gets oil on the breast feathers, and it goes and it lays on its nest to incubate, those eggs will fail. It just takes one tiny drop of oil to cause an egg to die.
But cleaning oil out of Louisiana's fragile marshes poses other problems.
Louisiana has the fastest disappearing land in the lower 48 states, and to come in and dig in this fragile system would cause greater marsh loss. It would cause this resource that helps protect our economy, our seafood, and our birds to disappear even faster. And so we can't risk losing everything to try to clean up the oil. It's just not an easy choice.
Repairing damage will take decades and billions of dollars. Beyond the recent civil court settlement, the parties responsible for the spill face fines for fouling national water resources.
Under federal law, the Clean Water Act, for every barrel of oil you spill in the environment, you discharge illegally, you're supposed to pay a fine of about $1,100 a barrel. If gross negligence is found, then that fine can be $4,300 a barrel. In the case of this spill, you've had nearly 5 million barrels that were discharged into the Gulf. You do the math there. If it's just negligence, you could be looking at $5 billion. This is gross negligence, which a number of reports appear to suggest. You could be looking at in excess of $20 billion, and this is just for Clean Water Act fines.
But efforts to make sure the bulk of this money goes to the affected region are now in limbo. The Restore Act, which would have diverted 80% of these fines, was attached to a critical federal transportation bill. That bill has been sidelined.
Restore Act's goals are very important. We're the ones in the Gulf Coast that experience the impacts. The federal treasury should not profit from the loss that we've experienced here.
On top of Clean Water Act fines and the civil settlement, BP will also face additional penalties under the National Resource Damage Assessment process, also known as NRDA. These penalties include reparations for losses to other national natural resources, including marine and wildlife, air and water quality, and the environment. But the true impact on these resources may not be felt for decades, and the deteriorating coast cannot wait.
Any ultimate resolution of this, whether it's a judge who decides, whether it's a jury who decides, or through a negotiation. Something that's going to be critical for Louisiana is that we have some type of reopener provision in there, where if something happens that we didn't anticipate, BP has to stay on the hook for those liabilities and needs to address those impacts down the road.
The lesson here, the lesson on any oil spill, is that there is no good outcome. Once you put oil in a system, the system is in trouble. It's degraded. It's going to take years, decades. We have no idea how long it'll take for the worst effects of this spill to go away. The only thing that the parties that are responsible for this can do is cooperate with the government, with the trustees, on doing the natural resource damage remediation and on paying the Clean Water Act fines so that we can, we hope, have Congress divert that money to restoration here. We can do good things for this system, but we can't fix this. This is a mess.
Ongoing damage assessments include the spill's impact on human health. The National Institutes of Health is conducting a landmark study.
The study was originally intended to monitor and provide counseling to 50,000 people involved in the cleanup. To date, only about 1,700 people have enrolled. Researchers say participation is confidential and will be critical to pinpointing links between the spill and possible health effects. For more information on how to enroll, call the toll-free number 1-855-NIH-GULF. That's 1-855-644-4853. Or you can find a link on our webpage. The deadline to join is fast approaching.